Right. We are recording. So quick couple thank yous. The George Eastman Museum curator, Kathy Connor, the assistant curator, John Ellsby, Wells College librarian, Tiffany Raymond, and Wells College VP of Advancement, Pam Sheridan. They all helped me gather materials to put this presentation together for you today. So let me share my screen. And let's see. Load my PowerPoint. Okay. All right. So the George Eastman House is a National Historic Landmark at 900 East Avenue here in Rochester. Mr. Eastman resided there from 1905 until his death in 1932 at the age of 77. Today, the museum is the world's largest photography museum. It's a complex that houses a large collection of photographs, films, and equipment, a theater, and the L. Jeffrey Selznick School of Film Preservation. In addition,
Renee,
yes.
why don't you do slideshow so we have a bigger image and
Oh,
less
I'm
garbage?
sorry. Thank you. No, I was supposed to do that. You're absolutely right. I was supposed to do slideshow. Hold on. Why am I not? No? Okay. Hold on, guys. Sorry.
Go back to where you were, and it was
Yep.
an option in the middle on the top.
There is in the middle on the top. Okay. Because I've got that black thing in the top. I can't see my. Sorry. Rachel and I had, oh, there it is. Look at that. I moved that.
There you go. And then you'll be able to click it through.
All right. Is it doing it?
Over on the left, it says from beginning.
Shop on the traffic circle now, right?
Yeah.
And
I'm sorry. Why isn't this doing this?
Scroll over to the left where it says from
Okay.
beginning.
Ah, thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Ah, there we are. So that's our wonderful museum. Okay, I will get this. And there. Okay, so George Eastman's name is synonymous with the camera, but in reality, the business made its money in processing, beginning with dry plate negatives and then rollable film. So this is I just pulled this photo because I thought it was really interesting for a couple of reasons. This is the packaging room at Eastman Dry Plate Company, which was the precursor to Eastman Kodak. He hired a lot of women at the dry plate company, both to develop the glass plate negatives and to do the packaging. So George Eastman was born on July 12th, 1854, near Utica, New York, to George Washington Eastman and Mariah Kilbourne. He had two older sisters, Ellen Mariah and Emma Kate. Now, George Washington Eastman moved his family from that area to Rochester in 1860 to be near the business school he had established and he was commuting to weekly. Unfortunately, he died 2 years after the family moved. He died in 1862. So George left school at the age of 14, earning $3 a week to help out his mother and to help support his two sisters. He also, in his spare time, when he wasn't working, created backgammon boards and wire puzzles to sell to his friends to help make even more money. And by 1874, he had worked his way up to be a clerk at the Rochester Savings Bank. So in 1877, he purchases photographic equipment and took lessons. Now, photography at the time was what we call wet plate technology. And he needed the lessons and he began his lifelong fascination with photography at that point. And I love this cartoon because this is the representation of what wet plate technology was, and really why photography, like you and I, we take pictures all the time now. People take, our kids take pictures, our grandchildren take pictures. Professionals took pictures back then. And because look at all the equipment you had to carry. What he was doing was he was learning how to use the equipment in the field. So he had to carry all the chemicals, all the glass plates, the camera for the exposure, the tripod, and he had to set up a tent because that was his dark room, his portable dark room out there. So, it wasn't a very casual endeavor if you were doing photography using the wet plate technology at the time. And this is just some of the equipment that you would have had as a photographer. This is actually in the museum in a room where we talk about and show people how photography progressed through time from daguerreotypes all the way through up to film today. Now, his experience with wet plate processing caused him to figure out if there was an easier way to take photos. So he had heard that over in Europe, they were experimenting with what they call dry plate technology. So in other words, instead of bringing all your chemicals out into the field and coating the plate there before you took the photo, the plates were pre-coated with an emulsion. And all you needed were the plates that had the emulsion and a box to put them in to get that exposed to take the picture. And that's what he would do every night after he got home from work in his mother's kitchen. He would experiment with how is it that we can, cover these plates, make them dry, and have them effectively help take photographs. So by 1884, he ended up producing these dry plates. And he found a partner in Henry Strong, who happened to be a person who was in the boarding house where his mother was running the boarding house. And he created Eastman's Gelatin Dry Plate Company. And it would be just this kinds of cameras that you would use. You'd slip the plate with the emulsion in it, expose it to the light to take the photo. So it was a lot easier than the wet plate technology. And then he wanted to even improve on that. So finally, in by 1884, he was producing rollable film as an alternative to plate glass negatives. And then in 1892, where's my thing here? Oops, sorry, I'm going to go back. In 1892, he renamed his company Eastman Kodak Company, making photography available to the masses. So Eastman's mother was Maria Kilbourne Eastman. This portrait happens to hang in the museum. Mr. Eastman had it painted from his memory and some photos after Maria had died. This photo was taken sometime between 1905 and her death in 1907, and those are two of her great-grandchildren with her. Maria was a very significant influence in Mr. Eastman's life. After her husband's death, she successfully ran boarding houses in Rochester to support herself and her children. And George was very affected by that and watching his mother work as hard as she did. She did have 3 children. George was the youngest. The middle child was a girl named Emma Kate. She was born in 1850. I don't have any pictures of her. We can't find any pictures of her. She died very young. She died at the age of 20. She had been afflicted at a young age with polio. Oops. The first child, the eldest child, was Ellen Maria. She was born in 1845. She ended up marrying George W. Andrus. Their daughter, Ellen Amanda Andrus, was born in 1871. And then she had a second child, a son named Royal, who was born in 1878. So Mr. Eastman by the way, who never married. He becomes Uncle George, and this role becomes very, very important to him. He becomes particularly close to his niece, Ellen, but he spends a lot of time with both children. He gave Ellen, his niece, her first camera and declared her a natural photographer. And in fact, actually, I read later that one of her photographs was actually published in chosen to be published in National Geographic. The children spent a lot of time in Rochester with their uncle. Ellen's first solo trip was at the age of 10 by train from Cleveland. And George Eastman was constantly taking pictures of his niece and nephew. And he used it as an opportunity, well, both to have spent time with the children, but also to experiment with different techniques in photography to see how his film and his cameras performed. This is George Andrus, Ellen and Royal's father. Ellen Mariah died in 1884 at the age of 41. George does remarry. He remarries 2 years later. But after her mother's death, Ellen spends even more time with her uncle. And George Eastman effectively becomes a surrogate father. And in 1885, that year between after her death and before his remarriage, Ellen actually spent most of the year of 1885 with her uncle in Rochester. She becomes his closest relative. He refers to her as his delight. This should all look familiar. So let me just go through a little bit of reminder of a little bit of Wells history here. Remember in 1888, the original main building burned down. And by the academic year 1890-91, classes resume, and they resume in the new main building. 80 students were in residence at that time. Ellen Amanda Andrus was a freshman. And so this is a postcard that Ellen sent her grandmother, but it's in 1906. Ellen meets Evangeline Abbott, class of 1893. Evangeline is called Nell. They become roommates and close friends. Weekends and school holidays are spent with George Eastman in Rochester. And Nell becomes a second niece to Mr. Eastman. Let's see. All right. This is the class of 1894. Ellen is in the center with her hand by her chin. You know, and I look at there's not a lot of pictures of her from her time at Wells, which is unfortunate. I'll get in a little later as to what Nell's observations of her roommate were, but I kind of look at her here and she's so happy, and it's like she's got a little spunk to her, a little spirit, and maybe a little bit of devilishness. And it looked like she was having a lot of fun. So that's her with her classmates. Now, Nell graduated a year ahead of Ellen. She graduated, she was a member of the class of 1893. She was pretty accomplished. She had done a lot of things while she was at Wells, held a lot of different positions, wrote for the literary magazine at the time. And here, Uncle George wanted to give her diploma from Wells College. So he set up a photo opportunity in Rochester. George Eastman paid for Ellen's tuition and living expenses while she was at Wells. Nell's family, when they were interviewed later, indicated that they believed that also George Eastman paid Nell's tuition at that time. I just pulled a couple of photos from the archives This is from the class of 1894 file. I was able to blow it up. I'm believing that Ellen is here on the right. And that looks like a hallway in Maine, but I don't know. Couldn't tell. It wasn't written on the picture, but it looked like that to me. And then let's see. I'm not sure what event this is. They are holding some kind of ivy or plant material here, maybe pre-graduation, but on the bottom left in the dark dress, and that is Ellen right there as well. I'm not quite sure where that is. It looks like it looks like it's in a dorm room, frankly, or maybe with the dean, who knows? Ellen isn't in this picture, but I took it because it looks like tea time. So back to Ellen and Nell. This, to talk to a little bit about this photo. This photo was on the porch at Sewell House. And Sewell House is a mansion that Mr. Eastman purchased immediately prior to the construction of his mansion that is now the museum. He spent, his mother ran the boarding house while she was here. It had 8 bedrooms. It is, actually, I just toured the house on Monday. It is a magnificent building. But Ellen and Nell spent a lot of their college time in this particular house. So Nell considered Ellen, and we have this from her interviews, Nell considered Ellen the quintessential Wells girl. Nell had been interviewed by a Kit Latane from the class of 1936 for the Express, and there's a very lovely article written about Nell in 1971 or 1972. Jane Avery was very involved with that. In 1971, at that time, she was the oldest living alum. Nell told Kit, who was doing the interview, just being a Wells girl was a wonderful thing. And I think you can see that on the faces of the girls when you look at those pictures. So after graduation, Ellen had hoped to work in a hospital, but her father and her uncle disapproved. Instead, Ellen moved in with her uncle and her grandmother in Rochester, and she became her grandmother's care provider when Mr. Eastman traveled and also kept her company. Coincidentally, Ellen, at that time, in Mr. Eastman's letters, he was worried because Ellen had suffered a bout of nervous prostration, causing her to be bedridden for a month. So Uncle George sends her and her stepmom to Lake Placid to recuperate. They do return to the Sewell House in Rochester, but even upon their return, Ellen is bedridden again for several more weeks with stomach pains. So after graduation, Ellen did come to live with Mr. Eastman and grandmother. He had, oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Messed up. Okay. Interesting. Okay. This, I just wanted to show you this. They moved into the house in 1905. This is Mariah's bedroom, and it's most everything in it actually belonged to her. Except the beds are, we know that she had beds like that because we have the invoice. The wheelchair is similar to what she had, but it's not the wheelchair, but everything else belonged to the family. And this is where Ellen would stay with her grandmother, because by the time they got to the mansion, her grandmother needed help all of the time. So here we are. This is Ellen in the conservatory in the mansion. I don't see that little devilish twinkle anymore, which kind of bothers me. There's not a lot about Ellen in the mansion itself, of course, because you're focusing on her uncle. So I've really become intrigued with Ellen, and I'm trying to find out everything that I can about her. But here's somebody who's just graduated from college, has learned about all these wonderful opportunities and sees her friends go off doing things, and Ellen is at home taking care of her grandmother, which from her writings, she gives no indication at all that this is a problem. She loves her grandmother, and that is very, very clear. But I don't know if you're 18 or 19 and then you're living here. You're living opulently because the mansion is gorgeous. And this is the conservatory where she's sitting now. It was renovated in 1919 by Mr. Eastman. It was a square. Believe it or not, he cut the house in half and moved one half of it 9 feet 14 inches because he wanted the organ that he had installed in there when it was built to sound better. And so the room looked a little different than what it did when Ellen first moved in to take care of her grandmother. And this is Ellen by the organ. So Ellen does marry. She marries George Dryden of Cleveland in 1901. Now she's known Dryden since childhood. He is older than her. And he left school when he was 12. And he's very much a self-made man. And much like her uncle. And actually I kind of look at him, it's like, she married his uncle, she married her uncle. All right, hold on a second. Okay.
I'll pipe in to remind you guys that you don't have to wait till the end for Q&A if you have questions throughout.
Okay. All right. So Ellen has 2 children. G.E. Dryden, called Eastman in 1902, and Ellen Mariah Dryden, called Sister in 1904. George Eastman hires tutors for her children so they can keep up with their studies while visiting Rochester. And in his writings, he indicates that his happiest holidays and Christmases are when the Drydens come to stay. Now this is on the porch at the mansion. 2 of them are Ellen's children, but that is her roommate, Nell, with her. And Nell did also marry and had 1 child. And this is a birthday party for the children in the mansion. And here are the 2 families together, the Drydens and the Abbotts. Again, this is George Dryden, Ellen, Nell, and I think Charles is younger. So this is Mr. Newhall, Nell's husband. This is Nell on the lawn. That is not Ellen behind her. I think that's just somebody that's helping with the children. But again, a lot of pictures taken at the Eastman house. And he really loved taking pictures of the children. The Abbotts were frequent guests and travel companions. And this is the Newhall family on the grounds in the garden at the Eastman house. So George Eastman was an avid fisherman, hunter, hiker, a just general lover of the outdoors. He used the outdoors for respite, for rejuvenation. He had a lodge called a retreat, basically called Oak Lodge. It's in North Carolina near Enfield. He traveled there by train in a private rented Pullman cart and would take his guests with him. This happens to be Ellen Dryden and her daughter, Ellen on the porch at Oak Lodge. He loved cooking. He loved picnics, cooking over campfires. This is an outdoor activity here. Ellen is over on the left. I'm not sure that Nell, I don't think Nell is in this one, but that's certainly Ellen on the right-hand side. She traveled with him quite a bit. This is Nell with Mr. Eastman. Mr. Eastman's in the center here. Nell here on the right-hand side, enjoying a brief rest and a snack. So Ellen becomes an alumni trustee of Wells College in 1914 and serves until 1920. She was a consistent donor and a member of what they had at that time called the $1 Million Fund. This is her daughter, Ellen Mariah Andrus. And Ellen did her freshman year at Wells. She would have been the class of 1927. She ended up finishing her education at University of Wisconsin. She had some health issues and she wanted to be closer to Cleveland. So she ended up out there. Ellen died on January 21st, 1950. She was 79. She left a $100,000 bequest to Wells. The college trustees at the time passed a resolution honoring her philanthropy, the fact that she was a lifetime member of the Wells College Association, Alumni Association, and she was a trusted advisor to college president McMillan. When I was looking at the files in the archives, there was a file, President McMillan had a file of letters received, and there were many letters back and forth between Ellen and President McMillan, and he would ask her opinion on many things. The Board of Trustees also recognized her involvement with the fledgling, at that time, the fledgling Eastman Museum. So Ellen and George Dryden gave a gift to the museum in 1950 that made the construction of the Dryden Theater possible. The theater is an integral part of the complex here of the Photography Museum. We have we have a huge collection of original nitrate films. They're very particular and they need a lot of care because they self-destruct very easily. Okay, they decompose very easily. So the museum, though, will bring them out once they're restored, and we have what we call a nitrate film festival, which is shown here at the Dryden Theater, and they'll pull out some of these older films that are in their original format. But thanks to her and her husband, the museum was able to build this. In addition to the money to build the theater, they also contributed art, film, and negatives, and some of her uncle's personal effects. Classmate Helen Edwards Fairchild, 1894, wrote of Ellen, "She had a wonderful life. For more than 50 years, she and Mr. Dryden did together the sort of things they both liked to do and gave toward worthwhile projects most liberally out of their abundance." This portrait of the oil painting of Ellen hangs in the museum today. I kind of like this one. I think it's a very flattering one of her.
Oh, good. Oh my gosh, she looks just so stylish. I just love it.
Yep, very. Just so you know, there's a story about the pearls that Nell tells the interviewer in 1971 that they were a gift from her uncle, obviously, but Mr. Eastman, when the girls would visit him, like when they would go down to New York when he was in New York, he would send a jeweler over with a tray full of jewelry. And, he would say, okay, you each pick one, and they would be baubles that at the time were worth $20,000 or $30,000. So Nell says in her interview that she never took gifts from Mr. Eastman, because she also told another funny story where they were camping and he challenged her to make this certain dish by campfire. And he said, look, if you make this dish and I like it, I will buy you a Cadillac. She did it. He liked it. He sent her a Cadillac, but she returned it. So he was good with he was very generous in some ways with the girls, but I think these were a birthday gift. I'm pretty sure they were a birthday gift to Ellen from her uncle, and she wore them all the time. This is Ellen Mariah. Okay, so Ellen's daughter, George's grandniece, George Eastman, and then Ellen later in later years. Here's your family shot. So let me see if I can help you figure out. All right. So this is the young woman you just saw in the picture before. So this is Ellen Mariah, grandniece. This is her husband, Joe Mahler. This is his great nephew, Eastman, and his wife, Dorothy. Ellen is here. Her uncle is here. Here's Mr. Eastman. And this is George Dryden, Ellen's husband. Ellen had two children and Eastman had one. So these are Ellen's grandchildren down here. I have a chart I can show you in a little bit how what happened with the family. And here is the chart. Whoops. Okay. So, nope. Okay. So the picture you just saw is here. And then these are Ellen Mariah's descendants right here. So we have a daughter. I think we have two daughters. And then some grandchildren down here. Eastman had three. Oh, let's see, three, yeah, or two, yeah, three. 1, 2, 3. And then further descendants this way. And everybody came back at the 150th. That is not George Eastman in the center. That is an actor that the museum had dress up like Mr. Eastman for the event. But these are his descendants that came for the celebration. And these were my resources. That's it. That went faster than I thought.
Awesome.
Renee, can I muscle right in and ask some questions?
Yeah,
make some
let's
comments?
ask. Yeah, this is the fun part.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for
hold on
sure.
1 sec, Rand. Do you want me to keep the recording on, or should I usually turn it off for Q&A?
Okay. Yeah,
But it's up to you guys. Okay.
We can turn it off.
Yeah,
All right,
that's
thanks,
fine.
everybody.
Well, that